Welcome to Better PR, a podcast by PRSA Sierra Nevada. Today's presenting sponsor is Kerri Garcia Hendricks, who just so happens to be our guest. This episode is also brought to you by PRSSA, that's the Public Relations Student Society of America. If you'd like to know more about them, look at them at prssanevada.com. Today's episode is also graciously being recorded at the Reynolds School of Journalism. If you want a premier journalism education in whether you're broadcast, publication, or public relations, go to journalism.unr.edu. Hi, how are you guys doing?
Good. How are you? Great to be here.
Doing great.
So, Kerri, you are the UNR Interim Executive Director and Chief Marketing and Communications Officer. And we would love to talk to you about the recent event of the explosion in both the Argenta and Nye residence halls.
I would love to talk to you about that. A very challenging 3, 4, 5, 6 months of work.
Well, it's definitely one of the most recent and local crisis communications plan that we've seen. And, you know, what a marvelous job, by the way. It's been handled excellently from an outsider's perspective and a former student perspective.
Appreciate that.
Do you want to walk us through some of the events of what happened, or give us just a brief recap for people who don't know what actually went on?
Absolutely. I would be remiss before I get there without first giving kind of a shout out. First, the staff, the marketing communications department. We have about 15, 18 people, and almost everybody touched this incident and had a part. All of the 20 plus organizations in the community that came to our rescue that day, and a lot of our communication colleagues just checked in on us. How are you doing? Can we help you? So I have to say thank you to them. So really to set the stage to really, get into what happened that day, day after 4th of July, so July 5th, which thankfully there weren't a lot of people on campus. And that even goes with our department. I think there were 4 of us in the department that day. I had just returned from Laughing Planet on North Virginia and 10th Street, came around the back of the continuing education building, which is about 2 buildings for those who aren't familiar, just down the street from Argenta and Nye Hall. I did not hear the explosion. I think I had the 2 buildings in between, so I was kind of insulated. And I came around the back side of the building and looked up, and here was this huge dust, debris, and I heard the second explosion. To say shocked, it just doesn't describe what I felt. I immediately pulled out my cell phone. I called the president's office, President Johnson's office, talked to Patricia Richard, the chief of staff. Do you know what's going on? No, we've heard. I'll get back to you. The next thing I did was text the communications team. I have 4 or 5 individuals that make up the team, and none of them were on campus. I texted as I went up in the elevator, if you're here, if you're in town, there's been an explosion. I need you here now. From there, we just went with all of our training, all of our planning. I am so thankful my team showed up in 20 minutes. I had, again, the county, the city, my colleagues in communications were right in the street with me. I think my third call was to our chief of police. He was in the street. Where are you? And really all the planning that we have, just if you've done crisis communications, those first few 5, 6, 7 steps, I know it sounds crazy, but it's just in you, and you just start implementing. Where's the media going to be? What's going on? Who's in control? Reno Fire Department was first on the premises, and so they were in control. And like I said, we had 20 plus organizations, emergency responders, show up within 30 to 45 minutes, almost too many. But they're trained for that, and they just go. So that gives you just a quick, in the moment, what happened. And I think within 35, 40 minutes, I did a first media briefing right in the middle of the street, right out in front of Laughing Planet, again, North Virginia and 10th Street. Didn't have a whole lot to say, but one of the things that's just very important in crisis communications is that first hour is what we call the golden hour. You don't want to wait any longer to either do a briefing, to put something out in writing. You need to do something within that hour. I knew we didn't have a lot of information, but that still doesn't mean you don't say anything. So I literally stood out in the street, and I have to tell you, I was dressed casually that day. I had little capri jeans and a dressier T-shirt, and I had sandals on, but I keep tennis shoes in my office. So that was when I went up stairs after I texted my team. I put my tennis shoes on and ran outside, and I literally stood in the street and said, "We know there's been some type of explosion. We are on it. You have all these organizations, fire's in charge. I will be back with you shortly, but we're not going to put out information that we don't know yet, but we're trying to figure out. I'll get back to you." Even that 5-10 minutes goes a long way. So that was the initial, 30-40 minutes. Then we were pressing on, okay, what additional information? The campus has a group called the Issues Management Response Team, and that is made up of 6-7 top leaders: the president, the provost, student services, police, legal, communications. We initially met. That's where you really try to find out what we do know. And I'm kind of fast forwarding through a lot of little stuff, but I knew we were approaching 50 minutes, and really we wanted to either get something more formal out. So at that point, I grabbed our chief of police. At that time, it was interim Todd Brenwick. We had the Reno Fire Department's chief there, and we also had the state fire marshal. And we thought it was really important, and we really followed this throughout. This wasn't just our event. We had individuals from the community, other emergency responder teams that were helping, that were involved, and we needed to have a cohesive message, if you will, and have them all weigh in. So literally, I had 5 minutes to walk across the street from Clark Administration over to where we had corralled the media in front of Laughing Planet again on North Virginia Street, right in the middle. And I told Chief Renwick, "We have 5 minutes to walk over. I think you need to hit this, what we do know, what we're working on, how many people." I had 5 minutes. That's it. Thankfully, he is such an articulate, quick. You have to be. You many times you don't have time. And we walked over. We had already grabbed the fire department, and we did a media briefing. Again, this is the second one, about 45-50 minutes into the incident. We also at that point had a phone number, because as you can imagine, about 300 students, if you will, or guests were living in Argenta Hall during the summer. And that is individuals taking summer classes and international visitors. So we had about 300. And the fact that it was the day after 4th of July, not many people, thankfully, were in the building. But that also created an issue for us, because we really didn't know how many were in, where were they, how do you get the word out to people? So that phone number, again, that golden hour was so important, so that anybody watching, parents, students, we could not only educate the parents as what we knew what was going on, but also we used it to say, if you live there right now, call us, call here, let us know that you're safe, because we had to account for 300 people. By 10 o'clock that night, we had accounted for all 300 and knew they were safe. And that was a lot of people working. That was fire, police, cadaver dogs, search. I mean, we really couldn't take anything. We had to search and make sure. But by 10 o'clock that night, we could tell the public everybody's accounted for.
It's pretty amazing. It goes to your crisis planning. You and I spoke a couple of days ago about this, and you walked me through your crisis plan, how it works, and then how you almost practice it. Can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. So we have a couple of things that we do. We have a crisis manual. Many years ago, we connected with a professional consultant, national consultant, and we have this manual. We also have it in the cloud. No one carries a manual around anymore. But that manual, the beauty of it is put together so that any communications professional could pick it up and use it. But what if you had someone that's not quite in that industry? Who knows? We're not all here one day. You can actually take that manual from the cloud or off the shelf and literally walk through it step by step and not even have to truly be a communication specialist. It can walk you through the common steps of how to deal with a crisis. So we have that we're always looking at, refreshing. We do what they call tabletop exercises here twice a year, and that's all of the deans on campus, all of the leadership team, our comms team, and that's when someone poses a situation. We've done active shooter situations, we've done weather, we've done explosions, and you're really sitting at a table and you're going through it. You're not actually doing the things, but you're walking through, okay, this happens, what next? And so we're constantly doing that. I send my team members and I go to FEMA trainings. They have a higher ed specific section of FEMA where you can go to a conference. Same thing, you're talking to your colleagues, you're looking at plans. So we're always drilling. The county, Nancy Luhagen, has a wonderful Crisis Communicators Council. We have guests once, probably 4 or 5 times a year. And so you're constantly just revisiting what's going on in the community around you and the world. We do a lot of just, hey, did you see this in Omaha? How do we think they backed into that plan? And we're always just testing and training, and you really have to. The other thing is, as I mentioned, the issues management team that we have on campus. That is our crisis team, if you will. And you have to have that because communications is one element of a crisis. It's important, but there's so many different elements. Recovery after. We have a resiliency officer. Who knew that on the university campus? And her sole job is, during a crisis and after, how do we keep the campus running? How do we keep students going to school, the business running? People don't think of those things. All very important.
It's a lot of preparation, for sure. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your mentality when, you see this giant plume of dust in the air. Is it more, and this is from what it sounds like it's go time. It's not sit there and panic time. So where were really your thoughts headed towards? Having this preparation is great and all, but for new practitioners especially, what is the mentality you're walking into these things with, and what do you have to be prepared for?
Yeah, it is go time, and like I said, I think the longer you're in the industry and the more crisis and issues management situations you go through, it does become just second nature. I promise you it does, but I really, and our team, we really have to focus. Our job is communications. We have to let the public, myriad of audiences know what happened, what's going on, why did it happen, and what are we doing about it? And that constantly is in my mind, and then you get into the golden hour. We've got to release some type of information within an hour. And the audiences are super important because this just wasn't, students and their parents were very important, but what about everybody else that works and is connected to the university, what I would call internal employee communications? You have to look at all those audiences and make sure that you're hitting them so that they know what's going on. The worst thing you can do is have all this external communications and you've never shared it internally, and you try nowadays to let your employees and your staff and faculty know what's going on before externally. Nowadays, it's probably about the same timing. But to get back to that golden hour is super important. And then it's updates. Every time there's new information, it becomes what I call a cascade of information. So we would take a singular message, and sometimes you tweak it per audience, but a lot of times it was, okay, this is going out to the media. It needs to go to an all-campus message. We need to put it on the webpage, our homepage. Our digital efforts were huge. Everything we do at the university, from a crisis or an issues management, whether we tell everybody to go to unr.edu. So digital is huge. Whether it's an alert at the top of the page or have a fact sheet, it's that cascade of information from, yes, the explosion happened, we're accounted for everybody, what are we going to do with the students now? And then, oh boy, we have 1,300 rooms that we no longer have, or beds, I should say. So it was a cascade. We did, if I look back now, we did over 100 different messages in probably a month and a half to 2 months. And that's just written, verbal, emails, articles, media advisories. It doesn't count for the other 50-ish social media messages. So again, it's go time, and it's strictly how do I make sure our audiences know what's going on, why, and what we're doing about it?
And I'd love to know too, how did you guys, because you have 1 hour and you have such a deadline because everybody's freaking out about family, kids, who's in the building, employees, things like that. What was the real organizational structure that you guys employed to make sure this event happened and that golden hour went off effectively rather than as a dud?
Yeah, I will say anybody who's done crisis knows that golden hour and even beyond, you really want to get information, and here, you're living in the crisis at the same time. So you're having to bother police and fire and everybody to get that information. But I will tell you this, the one of the most important things you can ever remember is, yes, the golden hour is important, but it has to be factual. It has to be correct information. We, from day one, we will not put what we think, what we want to think. It's got to be factual. So if you look back at that first message, it's not like it was 8 paragraphs. It was a couple of paragraphs. We know there's been an explosion. We think it's the boiler. We had 300 kids. Their safety is utmost importance. Here's the phone number, and we'll keep you updated. So that's super important. And we tell, the media in any briefing we had, we know you're looking for additional information. We're trying to get that as fast as we can, but we're not going to put out misinformation and inaccurate information. So I think everybody understood that for the most part, but you've got stories to do and people are going to, but I will tell you that first couple of hours it's chaotic. I can't say anything more, but your ability to block that out, and your mission is to get to the right people to get the information. And sometimes that's, like I said, walking up to the police chief and saying, I know you're in the midst of this. I've got to have this factual information. Can you confirm? Move on. You can't be shy, and the other thing is I go back to, and it's really public relations 101, is your audiences. We literally went into audiences, students, faculty, staff, parents, the regents. Can you imagine the governor was calling? We had congressional reps, our U.S. congressional reps calling. You have to manage all those audiences. And when you first start, the first couple days, you have one message. You can tweak it a little bit for each audience because it's impossible. And you want to manage the message. So you don't want 8 different messages out there. So we would take one message and cascade it to all those audiences. It's also being able to look across and say, Mark Johnson, President, you need to call this person, have a conversation with them. We're going to do an all-campus email for staff and faculty. The students literally, Student Services has a texting app that they use to get a hold of them. They did emails, they did phone calls. Even though communications wasn't involved in that, we're still thinking through it and saying, hey, have you thought of this? Are you using the app? So you're looking at all the different modes of communication and the tools that we have and making sure that we're reaching out to everybody.
And it's a real information balance, it sounds like. And I'd love to hear about, how did you balance sensitive information and developing information? Because a lot, especially for newer practitioners and myself included, it's like you want to give them information. But as you're saying, it needs to be true, it needs to be factual, and it needs to be timely. And in the goal of those things, it's easy to get caught up and be like, we want to jump the gun on some things. So how would you advise newer practitioners or somebody approaching this situation in balancing developing, sensitive, and public information?
Well, I would tell you there's a couple things in there. There's some tactical things and then strategic, but none of us have 8, 10, 15 people communication teams, not most. We had 4 or 5 people max. Then we had our other department supporting us. But very quickly when something happens, I literally, as leading it, say, okay, Natalie, you're going to do this. Nicole, we section off basically what they're going to do, so that helps us strategize, how are we preparing for the next thing. The other element is staying in the moment but looking out ahead. We know right now what we know about the explosion and the safety, and are the kids okay? Is everybody accounted for? Were the top We needed to focus on that in the first 2 hours, 3 hours. After that, we started looking ahead. Okay, people, what is everybody going to be worried about? Well, where's my child now going to sleep for the rest of the semester, because it was about a month and a half before school. What are they going to eat? How are they going to, all their clothes are inside. So we literally sit. And when I say sit, we're talking 15 minutes. What are the questions? What are the elements? And then we try to find out that information. And then again, what's the best way to get the information out? We knew right on that doing one-off, I call them one-off interviews, as media calls, can I talk to this person? That is really hard to manage in the moment in that first 24 hours, 48 hours. So we made a decision that we were going to do media briefings. Now, that's not a new tool for the public relations practitioner, but what it does is it helped us manage the message, manage the information, all the things that you just said, what's important now, what's going to be important in 48 hours, what's going to be important in 2 months. So we did 5 media briefings, I think, in 4 days. And we literally had, 5, 6 individuals. Again, the state fire marshal, who is now doing the investigation, the Reno Fire Department, who was still in command, our police services, student services. This was all about the students and the visitors staying in that building. So you've got to have someone that's close to it be able to talk to it. That was Shannon Ellis, who's the Vice President of Student Services. Mark Johnson, which I don't know if we mentioned, was in Europe at the time. And that goes to show you, we plan. Nobody's going to be here all the time. So the provost steps right in, he's trained, and he was the leader. To go back to the media briefings, again, we did media briefings probably every 24 hours that we had updated information. We had all 6 of those people, and they talked to each of those areas. Why are we being investigated? Why is it being investigated? Provost Carmen talked about all the elements of what we're thinking through and what parents might, be concerned about. So did Shannon Ellis. The police department talked about safety. Now you have everybody out of those buildings. Can people come in and loot? All sorts of things. We literally thought about all of that. And in prepping them, again, we couldn't write, we didn't write responses for them. We just said, these are the topics you need to hit on. Go. So the media briefings were key. And then every time we came out of a media briefing, cascade that information. We also did Facebook Live for each of those media briefings, which again, not necessarily new, but we hadn't done that. What that allowed us to do is, if you didn't catch it on the news or you didn't catch it, in a written form, you could go back and listen and watch those Facebook Lives. So we videoed every single media briefing, so that another way to get things out, and then again, cascaded the message out to all the key audiences. Sounds so basic, but I think people forget. Take that message every time, get it out to all your audiences over and over and over.
So looking back now, in retrospect, you went by the playbook, you've practiced the playbook, you had assignments, everybody knew their role. How did it work? Did you manage the message?
Yeah, I think we were pretty successful. You're never perfect. I would be ridiculous to say we were perfect, but the feedback that we got from the media, the feedback that we got internally, I have to tell you, being on a campus with 7, 8, 10,000 people, and that's faculty, staff, you're never going to make everybody happy. Not everybody reads and listens to a message. We had great feedback that they said, you know what? You tried to reach everybody in every way you could and kept us updated along the way. It's really hard, The media appreciated the media briefings. They got the information they needed. We also did questioning after. Everybody spoke. Anybody have questions? And we didn't stop until every question had been answered. So the feedback that we got, also just looking at the media coverage, pretty fair. Pretty honest. Our thing was to be transparent. And we were also very good about if there were misinformation or just wrong information, we weren't afraid to call the media and say, you might have missed this fact. Really important. That's not correct. So for as lean a team that we have, I have to say, I'm thankful that I have real professionals and we work. You have to be flexible. Even though I said we assigned people, you're going to end up doing 5 or 6, 10 things each, and you're going to get tired and you're going to get grouchy. And we work through it very quickly and good together. So I have to say, no one's perfect, but we reacted like we should have.
So from a tactical standpoint then, what were the pieces that you think had the biggest impact, aside from the media briefings and your total transparency was really something to watch. It was really well handled. But from a tactical standpoint, one of the things that we hear a lot about in public relations in these chats that we have with PR pros is social media plays a huge part in what we do. How was, from a tactical standpoint, then you had emails, you had press, you had social. What were some of the best things that you did? Digital also.
Yeah, like I said, media briefings is number one. Number two, how could I forget? Social was right there. I mean, I think within the first hour, we had social messages. We also monitor. We use a what they call a social media enterprise software called Sprout, and we invested in that 2 years ago. It's the best thing we ever did. All of our channels, our platforms, I should say, are up there, plus all the other main platforms, across the campus. So if Student Services has their Facebook, their Twitter, their Snap, we can see all the channels in one view, and we can set alerts. So you set keywords. So anything coming up, Argenta, whatever it is, we get pings, if you will, or alerts that tell us, this is rising to this, a lot of conversation around this, or there's misinformation. So social is, you cannot do communications without social nowadays, and monitoring it, looking for misinformation, putting out messages. Everything, again, we did. I talk about that cascading. It cascades to social media. Might be a slightly different format of what you're putting out, but the information is the same. Again, we drove everybody to unr.edu and then to our news hub, Nevada Today. So all of our social messages might have a little update, and then there was a link back to Nevada Today. And the other thing we did tactical, after we did the media briefings, again, new information comes in, different things go on. We went to an FAQ, a basic FAQ that lived on Nevada Today digitally. We could send it out by email to teams. We could, put it through social link. And that was initially 12 to 14 top questions. And we had different answers and updated it. And we continued to update that, add new answers and questions for months. And that way, that stopped us from having to put out 50 press releases, which that gets old. And it was a great way. Any media, anybody called, what about this? We'd send them the link or go here. And it was just this document that had, at one time 20 questions and answers. And we updated it and dated it. Updated this date so people knew it was fresh. And that, it just made things seamless. So that was very helpful. It's the tactical things that's crazy that really are helpful. So yeah, you had the media briefings, social, really incredible. We even had some of our students later on, when we started figuring out we were going to put them down at Eldorado Resorts and Wolfpack Tower, we have students do takeovers on social media. So we'll turn over the platform to them, have them take pictures, post. There's nothing better than having the real individuals that this is impacting telling the story. There's only so much the police chief and the fire department and our leaders can say, and it's important that they talk, but when you have the individuals that are really the ones that are faced with all their belongings are not with them and they're in the building, and they've been displaced, what better than to hear right from them how they're feeling? And listen, it wasn't always positive. Let's be honest. We had parents. There were some parents that were unhappy because their child didn't have their laptop. And it's real, but boy, they're alive. Let's be happy. But you have to manage that. And so, good and bad. We didn't try to hide anything. When media called, you need to talk to both sides of the street. Some that aren't very happy, some that said everything went great. It's part of the story. So
something I keep hearing you talk about are the partnerships that you had with emergency response crews, with different departments on campus. One of the ones I really want to touch on for this audience, for our audience of PR practitioners, is the marketing component. You and I have talked about in the past how there are walls oftentimes between public relations and marketing. Tell me about how your team came together.
Well, I'm a big proponent of the integrated approach, and the marketing communications department as it is right now is integrated. It's marketing communications. So what we found, though, and what I've found over the years is I've been thankful I've always worked in an integrated environment. But what you find is when crisis happens, it's the communications professionals that are usually very involved. And everybody else around you just kind of looking. Sometimes they don't even know what's going on. And so what we found is we need all of our other colleagues, our creative director, our director of digital media, and their teams to be by our side and to work together. But what we found is if they're not trained in communications and how you respond, how do we expect them to know what they can help with? So we developed probably 3 years ago it's, again, we have it up in the cloud, but we also have it on paper, and it's literally a structural document that shows, okay, if something was to happen, whether it's massive, big, whatever, this is typically how the chain of communication would happen, how you'd find out, and here's what we would typically need from you. Digital marketing, guess what? We need help with you putting an alert on the home page. Yeah, we can probably do it, but we don't have time. So if we craft the message, we need you to go in, put it up there, update it. We need you, we might need flyers. We might need, a digital story posted, and we don't have time to go to into the CRM to post it. So it literally shows them, these are the things we need your help with. This is where we need to be able to reach you. And if you're out of town, you need to have backup. And it's literally an org chart. And it works because now they have an idea of how they can help and we can work together. So very, very helpful. We keep that, and we do anytime, even major holidays, if weather's getting bad, I always touch and say, okay, everybody in town this weekend, where is everybody? If you're not, do you have a backup? We just naturally do it. We've figured out the university is like a small city. There's going to always be something happening, whether it's minor or major, and we have to communicate and make sure we're prepared.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like the theme of the response. Your response is your preparation. In crisis, there isn't time to worry about all the organization, so all this needs to be done in advance and, really going through the details. And the only way that, at least from what you've told us, to go through that is to practice it, do it in scenarios, go to tabletop sessions. But this episode is already breaching to be one of our longer ones, so we're going to come back to this topic. And we've kind of gone over just the initial breakout response in this episode. But thank you for listening to Better PR, a podcast by PRSA Sierra Nevada. Again, the presenting sponsor for this episode is our guest, Kerri Garcia Hendricks. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Love to be here.
Can you plug any of your social media or anything where people can find you? Yeah,
well, for me, you can find me on Facebook. It's under Kerri Garcia. I'm on Twitter as well, and Snapchat here and there, Instagram, more of my personal, but you can find me on any of those platforms, and it is Kerri Garcia.
Kathie, you want to plug yourself too?
Yeah, I do want to do one more little plug because we're going to bring Kerri back to talk about where did she put those 1,300 students who needed beds. So stay tuned for that. I'm Kathie Taylor. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of In Plain Sight Marketing, a full-service marketing and public relations agency in Carson City, Nevada. And I'm also the VP of Professional Development for the Public Relations Society of America, Sierra Nevada chapter.
We wanted to give a brief shout out too for our other two sponsors, PRSSA, that's the Public Relations Student Society of America. Find out more about them at prssanevada.com, and the Reynolds School of Journalism, the premier place for education in journalism, publication, and public relations. You can find out more about them at journalism.unr.edu. Thanks so much for listening and have a wonderful day.